motion.
Well, thank you very much, Ms Harrison. Can I say what an absolute pleasure it is that you are in the chair for this debate on the consumer market for financial advice and guidance. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to hold this debate. It follows up on a cross-party amendment that I put forward a year ago to the Financial Services and Markets Bill. And I am very, very grateful for all of the hard work that's been done by Treasury officials and by FCA officials over the past year under the leadership of the former Economic Secretary, the member for Arundel and the South Downs, who championed this cause, and to the member for Hitchin and Harpenden for taking things forward for his support. I want to welcome the proposals that were published in December jointly between the Treasury and the FCA for closing what is called the advice gap and completing the first part of the advice guidance boundary review. And I want to cover three things this morning. Why is this review important for our constituents? How will these changes help them? And what more can we do to help them? So starting with why is this important for our constituents? Now more than ever, they need personalised help and advice about their own financial situation. And when I say help, I don't just mean, obviously, the billions of pounds of financial support that were given through the energy price guarantee, the money off electricity bills and so on. What I mean is about the kind of help that will make our constituents more financially resilient over a lifetime. And I give way.
The Honourable Lady for bringing this forward and commend her for her work specifically in relation to improving facilities, financial advice and guidance within the consumer market. It's noted in this House and I congratulate her on that. I wholeheartedly support her, and we must give individuals and business the best opportunities possible to grow their wealth. Does the Honourable Member agree that this in particular should target to help smaller businesses that are looking to start up locally to ensure that they can take advantage of the high quality and, most importantly, affordable service and advice to help them make informed financial decisions? Thank you.
Harriett Baldwin.
Well, if I may, Madam Chair, I want to limit my remarks today to consumers and their access to financial advice, but the Treasury Committee at the moment is doing an inquiry into access to finance for small and medium-sized businesses, and I would encourage him to share with us any evidence that he might have in that regard. In terms of our constituents, they really need more personalised help to make them more financially resilient over their lifetime. We want our constituents to be more prosperous, to be better informed, more able to prepare for the inevitable highs and lows of financial life. And with the success of auto-enrolment, we now have millions more people who are taking personal decisions about saving into their pensions for their retirement, possibly across a multitude of different schemes over a full working life. And they need an expert hand to help them make good decisions. And yet, despite our world-leading financial services sector, it is actually surprisingly difficult to get help. And that's because of what's known as the advice guidance legal definitions. So, Ms Harris, I want to try out an analogy on you. Imagine we had created a supermarket. And in that supermarket, you go in, you pay an upfront fee to join of several £100s, perhaps even several £1,000s. But over your whole lifetime, you go into the section of the supermarket where you have the full choice of delicious, healthy food, other goods offered at competitive prices. Someone will make sure that you're buying things appropriate for your age, for your dietary needs, suggest some terrific, easy-to-cook, healthy recipes and some wonderful meal plans. But obviously, to make it worth paying that upfront fee, you've got to be buying exceptionally expensive goods now or sufficient quantities in the supermarket to justify that fee. So, in fact, only 8% of our constituents would choose to pay that fee. Everyone else in this supermarket ends up choosing to avoid the fee. They wander around the generic aisles of the supermarket. They may see some generic NHS advice about healthy eating or something on the supermarket website. They pay much higher prices for the same range of goods, and they often choose the unhealthy options, the expensive options, and they even find the scam options and the rogue options that actually scam them out of all of their shopping money altogether, because anyone can set out a stall in this supermarket I'm describing. And it's a slightly stretched analogy, I know, Ms. Harris, but I know you know what I'm getting at. Because the quality and cost of financial advice in this country means that we've created a marketplace where only the richest 8% of the population choose to shop and benefit from the healthy financial choices that our excellent financial services firms can give. I will give way.
Thank the honourable member for giving way and congratulate her on this very timely and important debate. She's moving now into the area which is, I think, very important, of professional, impartial, independent consumer advice to ensure people avoid making bad choices and steer them in the direction of making good, effective choices.
That's exactly right. I'm trying to use this analogy, and I'm trying to make us realise what a scandal it would be in this country if we did have supermarkets like the ones I've just described. And yet that is sort of what we have in terms of our financial services supermarket in this country. It is a slightly stretched analysis, but the quality and cost of financial advice means that we've created a marketplace for it where only the richest 8% of the population choose to shop and benefit from the healthy financial choices on the menu that our excellent financial advisors can give. And the remaining 92% of our constituents end up unadvised and, if lucky, find out that there is state-sponsored guidance like PensionWise and the Money Pensions Advice Service, perhaps through a newspaper article, perhaps through a Google search. And then they might find that advice, and a small number of them do, and it's very generic. The guidance can be useful, it can be helpful, but more often than not, it leaves them with more questions than answers, some very simple thoughts that leave them perhaps not knowing how it relates to their personal circumstances. And I fear that without urgent government action to explore solutions for the unadvised, we are creating terrible long-term consequences for the nation's savings health and for the prosperity of our constituents in retirement. Now, at its very best, this generic guidance and the personalised guidance you could get through the pensions advice service and PensionWise, it's a bit like the generic advice you get from the NHS to eat 5 pieces of fruit and vegetables a day. It's useful, but it's not really going to help you make an informed investment choice. In fact, yesterday, Ms. Harris, I did some mystery shopping on the Money Advice and Pension Service website. I wanted to see what advice my constituents would get if they perhaps just received a small lump sum, maybe an inheritance, a redundancy payment, or taken some tax-free cash from their pension. So I followed the landing page of the website onto the article that was labelled Types of Investing. I thought that might be helpful. But that page then asked, do you need help making smart investment choices? So I thought probably that's the right page, and I went through and it directed me to the Financial Conduct Authority's Invest Smart website. So I went onto that website, and on the landing page of that website, the first article is called Crypto, the Basics. This is on the FCA's own website. The third article on this landing page of the website is called Investing in Crypto. It then said if I wanted to get advice, I needed to see a financial advisor. So I was back to square one. So I think these crypto pages are there prominently, Ms. Harris, to probably warn people not to buy these things. But I actually think they end up by giving such prominence to look like an endorsement. Now, there used to be a network of bank branches in this country where people could go in and they could talk to a human being who might be a bit more helpful, albeit they would focus on their own brand products. But of course, there have been so many bank closures that most people would not know where to start to speak to anyone face-to-face about their savings and investment choices. And yet, I repeat, we have asked millions and millions more people to invest their own pensions with auto-enrolment, and we've left them with a default provider, Nest, which charges an upfront load of 1.8%. We've given people pension freedoms, which means that some very big decisions can be taken at the age of 55, which will have long-term consequences for people's financial health. So, as you can tell, Ms. Harris, I am not happy with this outcome for my constituents, and I'm sure you're not happy with the outcome for yours. When I was Economics Secretary in 2015-16, I commissioned the Financial Advice Market Review, which tried to make financial advice and guidance work better for consumers, and it came up with some good recommendations. It allowed consumers to use a small part of their pension pot to redeem against the cost of retirement advice in certain circumstances. But it was constrained at the time in what it could do by European regulations. So now we're underway with the Edinburgh reforms and their scope for a more UK-centric regime. I've been raising this problem once again. In addition, since that time, Parliament has legislated for a consumer duty on financial services firms, and this began to be implemented last July. We have a world-leading financial services sector. It has many excellent firms serving consumers well, but they are held back by regulations from offering their consumers any helpful advice from their own expertise. This could even contradict their consumer duty because they can see their customers are making poor decisions, like leaving long-term savings in taxable, low-interest accounts when they perhaps could be in an ISA or earning higher rates. Even Martin Lewis, who many people turn to for financial wisdom, has told me personally he feels he is held back from recommending certain sensible things because it might be considered financial advice. So I very much welcome the proposals that the government and the FCA have published jointly to address this advice gap, and I think they go in the right direction. There are 3 elements further clarifying the boundary between advice and guidance. This would give FCA-authorised firms greater certainty that they can give more support to consumers without providing a personal recommendation. And it would help firms give consumers greater levels of support with more confidence to operate closer to the boundary. I think it's a necessary element, but I think on its own may not surmount the cautious behaviour that you see from some compliance departments. The second proposal is targeted support. This new regulatory framework will enable firms to provide broader support without upfront charges based on the limited information they have on their consumer and enable firms to suggest products or courses of action. And I think this is going to be a key proposal to close the advice gap. The third proposal is for simplified advice for consumers with smaller sums or simpler needs at a price that's commercially viable for both consumer and firm. And I think with the development of technology, with greater artificial intelligence tools, more data out there, there will be innovators who find ways to give consumers more customised and less generic financial advice, something like coaching or help at a commercially viable price. Call it what you prefer, but these changes will help our constituents by giving them better and more personalised information to make their choices. Now, Ms. Harris, there will be, in closing, some consumer groups who will worry about allowing our financial services firms more leeway to help their customers. To go back to the supermarket analogy, there are actually sometimes bad apples even in the premium aisles of the supermarket. Last year, indeed, the Financial Services Compensation Scheme paid out millions to those who were badly advised. But doing nothing about this advice gap is also a choice. And I believe consumers are being harmed much more in the generic aisles of the supermarket, where often there is no regulatory redress. So these proposals are to be welcomed. They should be brought in as quickly as possible. And let's also agree to do more for our constituents by making sure there's much higher awareness of services like the existing Pension Wise and the financial advice money that you can take from your pension to pay for financial advice at key moments. So I wish the Economic Secretary well in implementing this important change. It will cost taxpayers nothing. It will harness the expertise of a range of excellent financial services firms. It will get much more personalised advice to our constituents during the points where they take their key financial decisions. And I give power to the Minister's elbow in bringing these changes forward.
The question is that this House has